We are here with Siren, the head writer of Fallout 4 London, and we are going to be talking a bit today about some of the light story aspects, the factions, and a bit about writing in general. So how are you doing, Siren?
I'm doing pretty good, TK. So I guess I should go into a bit about myself and my background, just
Yeah.
to give you like a little bit of a layout, kind of like the back of a book jacket
Yeah,
cover.
absolutely. Love to hear the little bio. It'd be great.
All right, so with an air of caution so that I don't sound like I'm full of myself, I'm going to try to not sound like that. But okay. So I'm Siren. My real name is Stephanie, and I am the head writer of Fallout London. I also do some writing for Fallout Miami. But in London, I occupy the position of head writer. So basically, my responsibilities include curating the game's main storyline, spearheading the factions. One of them I wrote entirely myself, and also just keeping track of all the other writers, giving them assignments, reviewing all of their work, making sure that everything is above board. In terms of my background with writing, the modding was basically my first foray into writing. I started out as a Fallout New Vegas modder, and from there I got picked up by this network called the Creators Network, and then they sort of matched me up with Miami and London, and then after a couple months of working in London, I got promoted to co-lead writer, and then maybe like 5 months after that, I ended up becoming the head writer. In terms of my background with writing, I went to school for film and television, and I focused on screenwriting. And recently, I wrote a short screenplay that ended up winning 3 film festivals in terms of its actual content, and it's being made into a film this fall, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, most of my background comes from screenwriting, but I ended up getting into game design, realized I really, really liked it, and that quest writing and dialogue writing was a good fit for me.
What do you find more rewarding about, say, game design over screenwriting? Because the way you phrased that, you said that you went into, you saw some game design and you started to get into it and you found out that you really liked it. To me, it sounded like maybe, I'm not trying to say that you liked it more than screenwriting, but something about it seemed to speak to you by the way you were saying that. So is there anything about writing for video games, writing quests of that nature, that you find more fun or more rewarding than, say, writing like a static screenplay or something in that? And forgive me for my ignorance on screenplays and such, because I'm not in that world too much. But just
No worries.
yeah, is there anything about it that's more fun or more rewarding?
So it's actually funny because there's such a difference between different kinds of writing. I first started out with prose. When I was 16, I wrote like an amateur novel, and that was my first like real like dive into writing. And then once I went to college, I really started doing screenplays. And don't get me wrong, I love writing screenplays. I'm a very visual writer, so it comes across well. I was told once by this like author I worked for that, prose writing is very much about how you see sentences in your head, and then screenwriting is incredibly visual. It's how you see scenes and camera shots in your head, and that's always how I've thought. So it fit me well. But when it came to game design, it just felt like I was writing for the audience I was meant to write for, because I've had a controller in my hand since the age of 2, and I've always been playing games. I've been a huge Fallout fan since I was like 8 years old, and I remember sitting in a diner having a conversation with one of my friends from film school a couple years ago, and I remember saying to her, like, I don't know if the audience I'm writing for in film is like the audience I want to be writing for. I feel like I don't know, that maybe I should be writing for games. But it kind of was something that slid out of my mind, because when I first started modding, I thought I'm gonna make this one mod, put it on the Nexus, 4 people are gonna download it, and then I'm gonna forget about it, and it'll be something, if people ask me at a party for 2 truths and a lie, I'll say I made a mod. And it'll be something I never think about again. But then it got more reception than I expected, and then I ended up being recruited to the Creators Network, and that for me was really surprising. Then suddenly, I filled out this application saying like, yes, I wanted, work on one of the big projects. I didn't even understand at the time what these big projects entailed. To me, modding was like a solitary thing that people did where they released them on the Nexus, you downloaded it. But I didn't realize that there are these big DLC sized projects like Fallout London, Fallout Miami, Cascadia, Arroyo, New Vegas, Capital Wasteland, that were basically creating a standalone game within the creation engine. And when I first got on these teams, I was completely overwhelmed because I had no idea what was going on. I had never written for a game before, but I just had done a lot of writing, and it, I just kind of took my technical knowledge of how the engine worked because at that point I had done quite a bit of modding, and I rolled with it, and that was actually, I think, what worked to my favor because a lot of writers, when they get into it, they really want to write for games and they really want to be like a quest writer, but they don't really have a knowledge of how the engine actually functions. So when you don't have that technical knowledge, it's incredibly difficult to write a quest or to do dialogue because you don't know how it works in the engine.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I know a bit about the engine from like the console side because of making content, like with videos. So I've learned a bit about like the free cam movements in the console and things of that nature. But when it comes to anything deeper than that, it's like a totally different language to me.
No, I totally understand that. It was overwhelming when I first opened it up. It took me about a good week of just making these little mods with trigger boxes and stuff just to figure out how things were working. And then eventually I built up to making my first mod and that actually planned on releasing. And yeah, it's definitely a progression. And the first thing I always tell people when they ask me, I want to write for games, what do I do? Is, think about what games you want to write for, then actually, try to mod it first. Because once you have that technical knowledge, that means the world to you. Because, like I said, I had never written for a game before when I came on London, when I came on Miami, and then just while working through things, trial and error, seeing what worked, what didn't, and then also, having that knowledge of how the engine worked really helped. And London was very much in its infancy in terms of story when I came on, so there was a lot to be done and a lot for us to learn. And I think that a lot of that trial and error helped a lot.
For sure. That can be applied to most things. A lot of people. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But I've talked to a lot of people who think that if they don't get something right away, like, oh, I can't do this. They don't try to go over the hurdle. But most everything is trial and error. Running a YouTube channel, making a mod, music. I played guitar for many years, and I've seen a lot of people get to a roadblock when playing an instrument like the guitar and being like, well, I just can't do this. Like, this is
Right.
like, this just isn't for me. But if if messing up and then learning from it is literally how you become good, and how your favorite people in that area, your favorite content creators, your favorite modders, favorite musicians, that's how they got there. You know what I mean? And it sounds silly to say because of course that's how it works, but some people forget that, I think, like when they're pursuing something.
Yeah, no, I could absolutely relate to that. And it also depends on, a lot of people want to get into modding, a lot of people want to get into game writing, but it's very time consuming to learn. It's not like just opening up a Word document and typing out a story because it's a lot of formatting, it's a lot of understanding, again, the technical limitations. When I first started out, I was actually sick, and I didn't have anything to do because it was like kind of a long-term thing. I didn't know if it was going to be chronic or not. And my classes had just ended for the semester because I was still in university at the time, and I wasn't working because I was ill. And I decided, I want to do something to fill up my time. I want to take on a hobby. So I thought, I love Fallout New Vegas. It's my favorite game in the series, and I thought I really want to make this mod for it. So why don't I actually just learn? And at first I was ready to give up because, oh my God, was it discouraging for someone who had no coding experience at the time. I've since learned Python. I've since gotten really into it. But, at the time I was a complete newbie and it was really overwhelming. But I decided, YouTube is a great resource. So I started watching a lot of tutorial videos. And eventually I felt like I was picking it up. And it also helped meeting other people in the Nexus community after I already posted my mod who could actually help me refine my skills further. And so communicating with people in this community is really key for someone who's looking to start out because people here are generally willing to help. And there's a chance that someone will probably have more knowledge of the technical aspects of modding than you do. So it's like, and by you, I don't mean you, I just mean you, anyone who's listening.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So it really helps to ask for help because that's what I did, and it improved my skills immensely.
Well, and it's a great topic to be on because, like we've talked about before, and a lot of people probably know, tons of people want to get into this kind of thing, and I know you've been asked about it. So are there any other tips you can give people about getting into, say, even writing when it comes to a profession, or getting into the modding scene when it comes to the whole writing aspect, because you obviously know a bit more about that than the average person on the online, you know? So I'm sure you can offer a lot of insight when it comes to getting into the whole scene.
Sure. So apart from cracking open the GEC or the CK and really immersing yourself in the technical knowledge, I recommend the CK. Well, starting with the GEC to learn the basics, because the GEC is a lot more simplistic than the CK, and then moving on to that because you have to learn papyrus scripting to get into the CK. But, you know, other than that, submitting your work to festivals, if you do screenplays, if you do prose, absolutely submit your work, because getting those awards and getting those laurels really helps people take you seriously as a writer. I know that definitely after I got mine, people started to look at me in a different light. And, you know, because at first it's just you validating yourself, and always having self-confidence is a great thing. But once people see that other people have validated your skills, then they will take you a lot more seriously. And if you have writing experience in, you know, say screenwriting or prose, then people will say, okay, you may not understand the technical knowledge of game writing now, but you clearly have writing skill. So if you can learn the technical knowledge, because anyone can really learn something technical if you put enough work into it. Whereas writing is kind of like an innate thing, where if you've either got it or you don't, then once you have that talent and you apply it to a learned skill that's technical, then basically you've done it. You're ready to be a game writer. So I recommend to people who are looking to get into this is to look for projects that need you, because a lot of the really big mod projects are only hiring people who have that experience now because they have the ability to be selective. I know from my point of view, I was only looking for writers that understood how the GEC or the CK worked so that they could effectively write dialogue. But there are a lot of smaller projects, a lot of startups that are looking for people who may not have that experience, and you will go through basically the same trial and error period that I went through, because when I first joined London, I was the only person on the project only writer, I should say, not the only person on the project, the only writer who had technical knowledge, and it was basically just like, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to finesse this? And we've come such a long way since then, and that was a year ago, actually, almost. I joined early July of last year, and here we are today.
There you go. Longevity is what that is. So, speaking of Fallout London, I know that you have designed some of the factions in the mod that's coming up. Are there any that you can talk about that you've designed? Can you talk about the ones that you've created? And if you can,
sure,
let's hear about them. Let's kind of dive in, do a little bit of, as much as we can, a shallow end dive, a deep dive, whatever you want to call it, because I know that you guys don't want to give out everything, you know, and stuff is still in progress, and you're still working on stuff. So, but anything we can talk about when it comes to these factions that will essentially be, you know, guiding this new world space that we're in, that we're not familiar with, it would be great to hear about them. Yeah.
All right, so I can talk about some stuff because, you know, we have some information on the website that people usually don't look at, and then we have some information that's going to be released in our Doomsday book that's coming out soon, which is like a lore document written from the perspective of one of our NPCs, and I actually wrote that as well. There's like 7 articles in it, and it's basically details any sort of lore related information people would want to know to get excited about the actual story of the mod. But in terms of factions, I created the 5th column, and originally the 5th column just existed in name and had like sort of an idea of where it was going, that ended up being totally scrapped. But I basically came in the mod, and I was expecting to get like a small assignment, but I realized just, you know, a lot of it hadn't really been done yet. And the first assignment I was given was, you know, we need someone to write the 5th column. Can you do that? So I said, okay, yeah, I'll try. And so I was given the 5th column, and they're kind of like my baby. They're a very mean baby. They're a nasty baby. They're a terrible faction in terms of morality, but they're very nuanced, and they have a lot going on with them. And I know in the trailer, which I objected to this part of the script, by the way, in the trailer, they were said to be fascist pamphleteers. I wouldn't really describe them that way. I don't want to describe them.
You're like a mother hen defending your flock. Of like, okay, hold it
Basically,
right there. Hold it right there.
my
That's
child
not what
may
they are.
be terrible, but they are not vicious vampires. Yeah, so while I can't give away too much about, their background because, obviously for saving it for the actual game to not spoil things for everyone, I wouldn't say they're fascists. I often feel like, especially after the whole like joke with the Frontier and the Enclave, that like calling a faction like fascist in the Fallout community has kind of become like a bit of a joke, or like I don't know if people really understand what fascist means when they say it. Like they don't understand what the actual, movement is.
Well,
But
yes, and I agree to an extent. Like when the Enclave is written in Fallout 3 to be the way that it is, like when it's rewritten by Bethesda to lose its nuance, that's when you lose the nuance. Labels like like that come up in the Wasteland. You know what I mean? In Fallout 2, they had a bit more nuance, and so I don't know. I mean, I understand where people put that label on them because it's easy to label them that. You know what I mean? It's very easy to see like, oh, objectively evil fascist faction over here. That's what these guys are. But if you actually go through and see the reasoning behind what's going on, like, yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and try to lecture about Enclave lore, obviously. But yes, I agree with what you're saying. Like, just saying that. But also, if the trailer, which by the way, full disclosure, I had to turn on subtitles for because I'm usually actually really good at understanding like different dialects when it comes to. But that guy is so like genuinely Cockney or whatever that is. Like it, I couldn't understand some of it. I actually had to turn on subtitles to to see what he was saying, that's a good sign because it shouldn't be dumbed down for people who can't understand it. Like there's subtitles for a reason, you know what I mean? Like it needs to be that kind of authentic, because if I went there and I was talking to somebody like that, it's not like he would slow it down for me, you know what I mean? He's talking anyway. When you have those kind of dynamics playing in this kind of world, if that's what they're trying to sell as like like I said, it's an easy label to be like, oh, fascist. So if they're trying to sell this fifth column as like, I don't want to say the big baddie or whatever, but if they're trying to sell them as that, using that kind of label, it easily identifies. Like, and also, if you look at it from the perspective of that's an in-game character's opinion of that faction, that may not be what the game thinks it is. That's just what he thinks they are. And if you keep it that way, I think it's a lot better too. Like if one guy in Fallout 2 is like, yeah, the Enclave are a bunch of fascists, paramilitary dickheads or whatever. Like, yeah, that's what he thinks they are. Like, he just watched Frank Horrigan mow down a child, like that's a pretty big deal to him, and now that's what he thinks of them. But like, if the whole game narrative is just like painting them that way, I think it does get annoying to people who want the choice to be able to maybe try to understand where they're coming from. You know what I mean? So anyway,
absolutely.
I'm trying not to ramble, but yeah, I understand both sides of why people jump to that, but then also why people are like, come on, be more nuanced. It sounds like you're trying to be more nuanced than that, but also I like the idea of in-game characters having their own like they're fascists, and then another group being like, no, they're not. You know what I mean? Like just like people having their own opinion about it in game that could shape the player's opinion of it.
I 100% agree with that. You touched on something very interesting, which is I like to, when I write factions, when I write, storylines and how these groups relate interpersonally, I like to focus on gray morality, because if you have a group that just everyone perceives them as bad and they perceive themselves as bad or something, it's boring, right? You don't want a group that just everyone thinks they're evil, because then there's no real nuance to it. And even like I draw a lot of my inspiration from New Vegas, because learn from the masters and all, but when you look at Caesar's Legion,
Mm-hmm.
And you actually go and talk, they seem completely, and I mean they are evil, but when most people think that they're terrible,
and when you see
a few
most
people,
and that's okay, and I'm not trying to talk over you, because I know that some people listening to us are like, what the fuck, don't talk over her. I promise you that's not what I'm trying to do. It's just it comes off that way because of the way Discord works. But what you just touched on, with most people think that they're terrible, and that is where it should end. So it's like most of the time when I'm playing through Fallout New Vegas, these guys seem like dickheads and I don't want anything to do with them. Not oh, the Legion is objectively evil, because they're not objectively evil. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because objectively evil
Right.
means there's no excuse for their behavior. They're just, mowing through and doing whatever they want, but they're not doing that. Like, there is a plan to it. Should have been fleshed out more. It didn't. We all know the story. But it's like what you just said, though. Most people think that they're dickheads and they're terrible and they don't want anything to do with them. But it's when it's when that's enforced on you, I think, that people get upset. Like if it was enforced on you, like, well, I guess it kind of is in New Vegas a little bit, but like they're trying to write a story there. They're trying to make these guys be the antagonists, and you can tell from the beginning that they're supposed to be the antagonists of the story. I don't know.
Exactly.
Continue with what
Like,
what you before I interrupted you like a big idiot. It's just
no.
I understand that a lot of people, like, either ironically or unironically, are like, yeah, fuck yeah, Legion. But there's a reason that there's even people out there that not, I wouldn't say support them or whatever, but like to go Legion, like the faction, like the way they operate. And there's a reason that there's people out there that do that. It's because it was written with nuance, which I think is the main topic of this conversation today. Nuance.
Right. I totally agree. Like when so yeah, what I was saying was when you go to Caesar, you're expecting like this big bad faction, right? And I never like do the evil role play. It just never appeals to me. It makes me feel internally bad. I feel bad killing NPCs. Like I really do. But when I go up to Caesar, and you talk to him, this guy is talking Hegelian dialectics to you, um and he's basically saying like, yeah, I expect there to be a synthesis between myself and the NCR, and that this isn't going to be, Caesar's Legion the way it is not going to be the future. And you're thinking that, and you're like, huh, he really has justified this in his head, where he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he's thinking it's for like a greater purpose or something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted to capture with the fifth, which is that, not everyone views them as this evil faction because they do some good in some ways. So, but in essence, they are still what they are, and I wouldn't call them. I mean, I suppose they are fascists. I mean, I don't really like to put labels on my factions though, because once you put something into a box, then you can't take it out of that box,
Yeah.
and it becomes that box. That sounds like a really stupid analogy, but what I mean is once you put that label on something, you form it around that label and it becomes a stereotype, and it's not very interesting anymore. And so when you combine a bunch of different things, you don't necessarily say like, these are fascists.
Yeah, but
it's easier to describe it to people by saying it's a fascist, but
yeah, and see, that's what I was touching on before with it's an easy label. It's an easy label to be like, oh, fascist, because it means so many different things to so many different people. And what I mean by that is, okay, the Enclave in Fallout 3, a lot of people say fascist organization. All right, so you have that example of how they act as being fascist. And then in New Vegas, you have people saying that Caesar's Legion is a fascist organization. So you have the way they act to represent what fascism is. And then in Fallout 4, you have the Institute, where people say is a fascist organization. So you have the way they act as a, like, stencil for what apparently this fascism is. But all three of those factions act completely different. And just because they have the commonality of not giving a fuck if other people live or die, I think that makes people label them so easily, like this or that. When in reality, when you're dealing with a post-apocalyptic wasteland, I don't really see that being that big of a moral dip of... And I'm not talking about the overlying structure of what some of these factions believe. I'm talking about just the basic of, oh, hey, I only care if me and my people are alive. Like that seems like it would be a pretty common thing in a wasteland setting, so it's like, yeah. I don't try to like oh, they're assholes because of that. Like a lot of people just immediately, and then it goes into the different kinds of things, like the Enclave want to introduce and they've always wanted to introduce something into the water for the most part to cure all the mutation and rid the world of what's going on with the mutations, essentially killing everything that even has a slight bit of radiation to it. And in the first game, you had the Master, who was like, oh, the super race of the super mutants, the master race of the super mutants. If we turn everybody into them and then purge everybody else out, then there'll be no more war because everybody will be the same. Like, these people or these creatures or whatever you want to call them, they have something in their ideology, in their head, where they're like, this is a good idea for this reason. And for people to totally negate that and be like, well, they're just fascists. Like, it bums me out, because most of the time there's so much more nuance. Now, I can't say that for like maybe the Institute, but when it comes to the Enclave and like the Master and to a lesser extent the Brotherhood of Steel, like, and it's really comes down to the writing, which is your department, which is why I'm excited, because you're talking about so much nuance. When it comes to Bethesda's, they've lost a lot of their nuance with their factions. So I think if you're using a lot of that when you're writing these factions, that this is going to stand out in a big way because of that.
I agree with that. And when you strip a quest down to its bare bones, there's only a few types of quests that you do. There's fetch quests. There's clear out this building full of enemy quests. There's go kill this person quests. And sometimes they'll combine a bunch of them into a long quest line. But there isn't... What makes a quest memorable is the actual story behind it, because if a quest shouldn't feel like a quest, it should feel like you're actually getting involved in it, you actually care about the NPCs, or you find their stories at the very least interesting, and you're interested in the actual like content and theme of the quest, so that you're following because you want to find out what happens, you want to see how things turn out, or you want to have your choices have an impact on how things go. So a quest, when you actually play a quest that is well written, you don't feel as though you are just doing a fetch quest or just clearing out a building. It should feel like something more. And, so there's nothing that stops people from just writing those quests. And I think people look at it like, oh, there's so much you can do with a quest, but really they all come down to their base components. It's just, how do you write the story around it that makes it interesting, because they're all going to be the same. And that's what it came to me when I was writing the 5th column, which is that I need to find ways to make this interesting. I need to make each quest feel different and make you like explore the world, because that's another thing that with game writing that you really have to encourage, which is world exploration. How can you force the player to actually go around the map? Because when you have a world space like London's, which is about the same size as vanilla, if not bigger, because we have 5 boroughs that are... I know everyone's gonna get on me for the way I pronounce borough, but I'm American, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but...
I say Thames, and I heard all about it when I was supposed to say the Thames River. I said the Thames River, and oh my goodness. So no worries, you're not alone in the boat.
Yeah, thank you. But, with the boroughs, they're their own separate world space, similar to how, you load into Diamond City. And those are huge in of themselves. So when you have so much space, like London has, you need to really find a way to get the player to go around there, and that's essentially our job, because level design can build it and make it beautiful, but if we like keep all of our quests in like one small area, then you're never going to see the rest of London. So you really have to encourage exploration. And I got so off on a tangent. I should really go back to we were talking about nuance.
Nuance in the 5th.
Yeah, okay. And nuance in the 5th, right? Okay. Oh wow, I'm completely off on a tangent. But yeah, so when I approached the 5th, I thought, like, how do I take this? Because the initial concept for the 5th, which has been totally dashed, so I feel comfortable saying this, was to kind of make them like, complete black shirt fascists, like Nazis, basically. And I thought, that's such like a stereotype, I guess, for a faction, and that, they can be so much more than that. So I thought, I can still keep them. I don't want to like polarize them left or right. But I do want to polarize them as authoritarians and focus on that. So when people say fascist, I kind of say like, yeah, that's true, but I that wasn't even the word I used to describe them. But I drew a lot of forming the actual structure behind the backstory of the leader, Eve, and her power struggles internally, and just the general structure. I started to look historically, and not just within British history, but my minor was in archaeology in university, and I used to focus on like Egypt and the ancient Mediterranean. So I was looking towards the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom of ancient Egypt, and like if anyone's ever heard of like the Pharaoh Hatshepsut and like her power struggles against her stepson Thutmose III. I basically was looking at that and saying like, how can I reflect this with Eve and with her, with the way her family functions. And that was just a lot of pulling these different references and incorporating them into the mod. because I feel like a lot of the times we can actually look to real life for inspiration. It doesn't necessarily have to be your personal experience, but it can be something that really happened historically and just say like, this is so far removed from anything to do with London, but just taking the bare bones of it and using it as a skeleton structure to formulate this faction might actually work.
Yeah, that's actually a super cool idea, in my opinion. To
Thank you.
well, yeah, to do well. I've always enjoyed things like that when you like, and you can see it a lot on YouTube. People are like, oh, the top 5, references in video games or something like that, and you go in and people talking about this is referencing this event. So it's cool that you're thinking that way, because it seems like a lot of AAA developers think that way when they're writing for games. So you're using a practice that I have seen in the industry my whole life. So it must be a good practice on just based on that. But I also enjoy it when I see it in games. So that's neat. I learned recently, apparently, that the Trojan horse incident didn't happen, and it was just a tall tale.
I'm actually not sure about that. It might have just been something Homer wrote, honestly,
And of course,
but
we're
it's
talking
so
about Homer
hard.
Simpson. Yes.
But when you're thinking about history that
Just
goes
like,
that far back, it was already an oral tradition by the time it was written. So how can you even say that, it was actually accurate?
yeah, I
It's a
don't
really
know.
muddy field.
Okay, so I'm dumb, and I was like, oh, that was just a historical event that happened. And like, so, and then not too long ago I was watching something, and it was like, yeah, the tale of the Trojan. I was like, wait a minute, did that not happen? And then I looked it up, and they were like, no, it's a tale, it didn't happen. It's like, what? So I don't know, it's just talking about historical events. It jogged my memory about that. Of course, I'm completely off topic. Is there any other is there any other factions that you can give us a bit more info on? I know that you said that a lot of people don't check the site, apparently. So on the site, I'm sure you pretty much have the descriptions in your head of what these factions are. And is there anything that isn't on the site that you can tell us about it, or is that all the information that we can that's like available right now about them?
There's a lot that actually isn't on the site because what's on the site are just our main factions that you really interact with who, although not all of them have like an ending associated, they play a major part of the main storyline. So we have a lot of factions. The way that I organize it compartmentally in our drive and also how I explain it to my writers is that we have main factions, which are all the ones listed on that drive. I'm on the drive on the website. We have sub-factions who are important enough to have several quests associated with them and who control areas of London. And then we have minor groups. Minor groups are so small that they may or may not have a quest associated with them. A lot of them are just themed raiders who have their own unique dialogue, their own unique look, but they don't really serve a purpose other than being raiders.
Okay.
And so with sub-factions, we have a bunch of sub-factions. We've touched on them in our videos, and we've talked about them in our Discord. But we don't really, cover them on our website, which, we have the Pistols, who are basically punks. We have the Roundels, who are like mods, like mod culture. And then we have Miller's Men, who are skinheads. And we have the Jack Tars, who are like sailors, but I would say they're more of like glorified raiders, essentially.
Okay,
Um,
just take a step back real quick. Did you did you say who are skinheads? What do you mean?
so
Explain. Like, are you like skinhead has a direct like racist overtone when I hear it. To me it's like people who are like white supremacists. Do you have a white supremacist faction in this
Oh
mod?
no, they're not. So when we say skinheads, we're actually referring to the skinhead culture that originated in Britain like in the 80s and 90s or even before that in like the 70s when I think even going back to the 60s. I could be wrong though. One of our team members would be able to comment better on this, but they're basically it was a group of kids who kind of came out of council housing and dressed in a particular fashion, kind of like with the white t-shirts, suspenders, jeans, and they would shave their heads. Um, that's kind of where the skinhead culture came from that we're covering, and we don't actually get into any sort of like racial tension with the skinheads. However, they are an actual fascist group. I feel 100% comfortable saying that they are a fascist group, but they are not they're
Not
not
racially
racially
fascist.
driven.
Okay, I understand.
No.
I'm not trying to, because I like, if again, it's all about nuance. I've played games that do have racial overtones and things like that. But I've never played Fallout that really goes there with like actual like human races. It seems like, oh, super mutants or ghouls, like there's a lot of ghoul bigotry, there's a lot of super mutant bigotry, which was earned through the wars that those had with humans, you know what I mean? And also a lot of humans in the Fallout universe, they see a ghoul, they're like, oh, what the, you know, what's that? So like there's a lot of that, but you don't see a lot of like, it's almost like after the bombs dropped and everybody came back out, race wasn't it wasn't on everybody's mind anymore. It suddenly didn't really matter anymore real fast. And so that's always been something I've liked about the Fallout universe. But so I was just wondering if that was something path you guys were going down. To hear that it's some kind of culture from London is actually cooler, because to me, I don't know anything about any of that kind of stuff. I've heard about the punk scene from London, of which you were talking about with one of the factions as well. But I haven't heard about this other culture that you're referring to. So to see that you guys are actually pulling from older cultures of like what I would say the London version of Americana is, where it's like, oh, this, you know, this was a part of the 80s and the 90s, this was a part of this is a part of that, like, and then putting that into the game, I think paints again a good picture on why I think this is going to work much more than I ever have before when it comes to projects of Fallout outside the United States, because I always insist that it's like you need this Americana for it to be a quote Fallout game, for it to feel that way. But the way you guys are injecting this like older London culture into the writing and the setting of the game, I think is really going to replace that well, just from what I've seen.
Thank you. We really tried to with the sub factions. We really tried to focus on British subcultures and incorporating them into the mod, because ultimately, and you know, this goes back to the complaints we had in our trailer, which is like, oh, this accent is like way too exaggerate. This isn't what British people sound like. That, and for one, that was one character. Not everyone's gonna sound like that. That was just one character who, like, his penchant thing is that he sounds like that. But we try to give people a uniquely British feel, so that it doesn't feel like you're playing Fallout in America. So it actually feels like I am in a different country. This is not America. This is Britain. And because of that, we do have to be a little heavy on with like the actual, you know, references. We have to be heavy with a lot of the themes. Like, for example, having these sub factions based off of subcultures would, in my opinion, be being heavy on the themes, because we have to really touch on all these different things that are uniquely British and really make you feel like you're immersed in this different world that is not American Fallout. So, you know, even things down to our street lamps. We redid the street lamps. Sunny Delight, our head of 3D, redid them because we were just like, well, the street lamps have to be different so that you feel like you're not, you know, an American Fallout. So, yeah, this British Kana, if we want to call it that, is essentially what we want to do. Or Brit Kana maybe sounds better, but you know, it's to immerse you in this new culture that you've never seen before in a Fallout game. Because, you know, if we're gonna make a foreign Fallout game, we want to do it right, because as of now, what we're doing is unprecedented. There's never been an official Fallout game in another country, and there's never been even a fan-made Fallout game in another country that's gotten this far in terms of development.
Yes. That's it. You're correct. Yes, you are correct. No, I was just, you're right. There isn't. And I can tell you a bit about that from my perspective as somebody who just came in and, you know, saw a peek of what was going on. One of the things that struck me immediately, and I think it actually connected with a lot of people too, was seeing the UK style, London style double-decker buses in ruins, like on the side of the street, because you do not see that in any Fallout game. And it really immediately, as an American, makes me think immediately of the UK, like just instantly. So when I see it, I'm like, oh man. And I just remember, like, I remember when Sunny was flying me through the map, like he was sharing his screen and flying me through the map. I remember just being like, oh my god, and he'd stop on the buses and like show me the inside of the bus and like, you know, look all around them, because I was just like, it just blew me away. And so little things like that, it's just, I'm not trying to, you know, blow it up so much, but it's just, I really like what you guys are doing over there.
No, I like, it's very flattering. Like, I like to call myself like the level design hype squad sometimes, because when we're going through the world space and I'm seeing, like, you know, everything they've built so far, because they've gotten so far with the world space in the span of a year, because not a lot of people know about this, but actually we had an original world space that was totally different. This was even before I came on the mod, that actually was totally scrapped and completely redone into the one it is today. So all of the progress that people see when we release our screenshots and videos is that 100% was done in the span of a little over a year. And it's almost, the world space as it stands is, you know, very close to completion in terms of everything being built. And of course there still needs to be like fine tuning and pass throughs, like detailing, but in terms of it actually being built, it's actually like nearing completion. And it's just crazy the amount of progress that was made. But you know, when we're going through it, I see everything and I'm just like, wow, I'm so like proud to like work with these people who would just have like so much talent in terms of level design. And it like blows me away every single time.
Yeah, it seems like a really nice and fun team to have over there. It seems like you guys work really well together. I mentioned that in the first interview that we did. And as we're closing this one down, is there anything else that you would want to touch on as we close this out? Is there anything you feel hasn't been addressed? I was going to ask you about quests and the story, but I know you can't get too much into that. Just anything that you think we should know that we're allowed to, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, we just touched on the team now, and I could talk about writing progression a tad more because of like as to where we are now in terms of like the writing team and what we still needs to be done. But yeah, like you know, working on the team has just been like really rewarding. I know like one of my team members recently said like, yeah, like joining this project was one of the best decisions I ever made because I agree with that fully because you know a lot of us we have full-time responsibilities, we have jobs, like families, like lives, and you know going on, but you know we're always in there, especially during COVID. I think we were always communicating with each other, always in voice chat together on Discord in our like team voice channel, and everyone there is very much like family. Like we're so close, we know too much about each other to be frank. And you know, and we plan meetups like recently this weekend, like 3 of our heads of department who live in the UK just met up to celebrate the trailer. Like, you know,
I just recently did that as well. I met one of my admins, and I met with Epic Nate 315 or whatever the numbers in his name are, a fellow content creator. It's funny that a lot of people seem to be doing that right now. Is all all I was getting at. It's like a big. Everybody's like, oh, let's all meet up.
I think it's so cool to meet the people you've always been working with.
Well,
you know?
yeah, big time. You talk to these people online for so long, and then you finally get to see them, and that's always fun. But I think COVID's starting to calm down a lot in some of the other areas, and people are feeling a bit more like, oh, I could go out and not be scared of really leaving right now. Maybe they got vaccinated, whatever the case may be. And they feel more free about it, and I think that's leading to a lot of people being like, you know what, I'm gonna go do some shit I haven't done. I'm gonna go do something. It's this big long thing that's been going on, you know, super stressful. I'm just gonna go do something, have a good time, and it's been really cool, really good experiences.
Yeah, 100%. Like I can definitely say like, you know, I love my team. I've there's some like, you know, despite the fact we're not in person, there's some of the closest friends, you know, and they're definitely like they're all fantastic people. I'm very glad to have met them and to have engaged with them like the way that we have. In terms of like writing progression where we are now, we have completed the main storyline. We've completed all the faction quests. We have side quests written, although we're not completely done with the side quests. And right now, our main focus, we just finished all of the ambient dialogue, like, you know, combat and detection lines, like, you know, NPCs reacting to events in the world.
I want this head on a fucking plate.
Dialogue.
Like that?
Yeah, stuff like that. Or, like, you know, when you're wandering around Skyrim and a guard is like, oh, wow, I heard, like, the Greybeards just invited someone to High Hrothgar or something like that. Or the infamous, like, I used to be an adventurer like you. Like, those kinds of lines are all written.
My favorite one is the gods gave you 2 arms and you used them both. No, it's 2 hands. The gods gave you 2 hands and you used them both for your weapon. I respect that. It's my favorite. Oh man, fucking love it every time I walk into Whiterun and one of them says that. It's like, I don't know, it hits me in the funny bone, makes me giggle.
Yeah, Skyrim has some fantastic lines.
It really does. It really does. Anyway, so continue. So you've written all these lines. Obviously, we're not talking about them being voiced or anything. We're talking about this is just at the writing stage.
This is just written, and you know, like, and I wanted it to feel as unique as possible because, like I said, we have a lot of minor groups, and they're all very much themed. So each group, even the minor ones, have their own set of ambient dialogue. So they have their own unique reactions, their own unique miscellaneous dialogue, their own unique combat and detection lines. So it just makes it feel like every group you're dealing with has its particular theme, and so you really get that aspect of British culture. And for right now, our main focus is completing the dialogue for the main storyline, which has already been started, and just making sure that that's all done because we can really start doing serious implementation now. With now any NPC can go in the game because all their dialogue is written, and now yeah, and then after that we can really start implementing the main quest and really get this mod done. So that's really what my focus is on right now.
Are you ready for Bethesda attention?
Bethesda attention?
Have you
man,
thought about that?
I've thought about it. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I hope that they receive us positively. I think they will, because I mean, but I also think a lot they might be a little bit miffed because a lot of people have been thinking we were Bethesda. Like a lot of people on the trailer.
That happens with every mod.
Oh wow.
It happens with every mod.
Yeah.
It's not exclusive to you. Don't feel bad about it. You can go into the comment section of any trailer of any mod, or even our interview about your mod, or my last video about your mod, where people will think that it's like an official game coming from Bethesda, that it's a DLC or something like that, and you just can't. Maybe they learned from the video or something, but they're clearly not learning it from the video because they go into the comments and say, oh, like Bethesda. So I don't think Bethesda takes that seriously. I don't think they're going to get miffed. I've only heard of a couple of cases of them sending out cease and desists about things. And it's usually never mods like this, so I don't think you have anything to worry about there at all.
Yeah, we're very careful with copyright. I don't think there will be any issues with anything like that. I actually look forward to hearing from them. Like, unironically, I know everyone like memes him, but when I was younger, like many years ago, Todd Howard was actually like a role model for me in the fact that he was so persistent.
Don't even start. No, I'm not even saying it badly. Like, I like that guy quite a bit. Like a lot of people, again, I understand like the tell me lies meme Todd Howard situation. Like I totally get it, and I think it's hilarious, and I engage in it as well. But when it comes to like a working level where a guy who has influenced so much of things, like so many things that are such a big part of my life, like that guy is a very important person to me, like 100%, like 110%. Like, and then we have Starfield coming, and of course people are like, oh, all you saw is this nonsense reveal trailer or whatever, but that's not even the point. It's the journey to Starfield. This is a game that Todd Howard's been wanting to make since he was a teenager, and he is finally like directing this game. That's probably a send-off from the company because he's getting to retirement age. This is probably right. Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 is probably his last go, and I just really, a part of me is very excited about the story that can be told through that. It's not about, oh, is this game going to be good on a technical level, creation engine, blah, 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 blah. It's not even about that. It's about what kind of story is this game going to tell? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a nerd about stuff like that. And I'm not even a fan of... No,
I totally agree.
Well, I'm not even a fan of Emil's writing, really. Because I know that he's on Starfield. I saw him in the trailer or the breakdown or whatever. But I know with the direction of Todd Howard that they can create something very special because they've done it a few times. You know what I mean? So, like... Yeah, anyway. I can gush about that as well. So don't feel bad about him being one of your role models. I respect him on a great level just because he's a meme, like everybody's I'm a meme, you know what I mean? Everybody's a meme. So like I like his work quite a bit. I don't know the guy outside of his work, you know what I mean? But when it comes to his work and his professionalism, I love it. So anyway, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and I guess like one last note I'd like to say is because I've gotten to there's been I guess two main concerns from reading comments about me as like a writer, which is one that I'm American, and that two that I'm a woman. Ironically, that is a concern I've seen quite a bit. So for the American one, I actually used to live in London for a short period of time. And so I am familiar with British culture. I'm obviously not a native, but I'm not totally ignorant as well. And I also I make sure all my material takes pass-throughs from actual British members of the team so that it's accurate. And for the second one, I think one concern I saw from a lot of people was saying that they thought that because I was a woman, I would like the words they used were that I would make it SJW content, quote unquote. And that's, I want to say, like, right now, that's not my intention. That I'm not here to like promote anyone's agenda, regardless of what it may be. I'm here to make a Fallout game. And I'm a huge fan of the series. I have been since I was a kid. And that's what my intentions are, and that's what everyone's intentions on the team are. But you know my gender doesn't really have anything to do with the role.
I agree.
It's not.
People who think that women are going to inherently lean towards like leftist or SJW stuff, again, I don't ever really get political or anything like that. I'm using these terms to describe what these people are talking about, because that's what they're referring to. They haven't lived in a rural United States area and met some good old girls. You know what I mean? I live in a small town, and none of them are SJWs. They all drive giant trucks and carry AR-15s open in public, and are very vocal about just about anything that you wanna hear. So like that they will tell you straight up very unpolitically correct things right to your face. I don't think gender determines that. I understand where people's concerns are, but that, I think when it comes to more infused writing where things get twisted up in that kind of stuff, is the industry as a whole. It's not about anybody's gender. You know what I mean? Like well, and I'm sure to some people it is, but what I mean is like any gender of person could make something a big political SJW thing. You know what I mean? Like maybe they're stereotyping, oh, a woman's going to be softer, going to lean more towards these values, but like I said before, I'm not claiming that you're some rough and tumble rural, good old girl American, rural.
Yeah, gonna rough them all up.
Yeah, I'm not claiming that you are. I'm just saying, like, just my experience is, I've never seen that, be the defining factor of that. I guess I could say I understand the concern, but you've never given me even like, it would be different if you gave off those vibes. You don't even give off those vibes. Like you come off very professional. You come off as somebody who takes this seriously and somebody who wants to do it well.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm just telling the truth. But you know what I mean? Like you come off as somebody who takes it seriously and wants to do well. And I guess if somebody was, having those values, they would, feel the same way. But most of the time they don't come off professional. They come off, like they're forcing their views down your face. And you've never struck me as somebody who does that at all. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think anybody has to be worried about anything like that when it comes to this. From what I've seen, I guess I haven't seen much more than, the average person, but I was invited in to a bit of it when we were all talking. It all looks up and up in like Fallout, or I wouldn't be so stoked on it. You know what I mean? Like, if it didn't seem like Fallout, I'm usually the first one to open my mouth and be like, this isn't like Fallout. So I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't feel it. You know what I mean? So hopefully, if anybody values my opinion, hopefully that carries weight when I say that, because I do mean it, that this project doesn't seem like anything like that, and nobody's agenda is getting shoved down anybody's throat from what I've seen. It's just a Fallout game in London, and I've been surprised at how authentic it looks and feels. I've never played it, obviously. I'm just saying from what I've seen.
No, I very much appreciate that, because this is very much like a passion project. Everyone in this community, not just on London, but in general, are here because they love Fallout and they want to make content for, if they didn't love Fallout, they would mod some other game, or they wouldn't mod at all. So it's, we come here because we want to like leave our footprint in this game and see, like, I love this content. How can I try to improve or match it? And yeah, like, oh, you wouldn't believe some of the comments I've received. Like, I've had people DMing me like slurs that I will not repeat, even because they, are just
it comes with the territory,
slurs against women.
Yeah, no, that comes with the territory. It sucks that you have to deal with that, but if you were a dude, you would be dealing with the like. You probably do get it worse as a female. I will say that. You probably 100% get it worse. I wouldn't say it like turned up to 100%, but I can say with a 100% certainty that you probably get it more often. But if you're in the limelight, people are going to do that to you. I get it too. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Again, you're not alone in that boat. I'm here as your support team.
Thank you.
I'm saying
most people are positive,
Yeah,
like,
and that's what you got to look at.
Most people are actually good.
Yeah. Can't let it get to you.
Unless you have any questions for me, I'm not sure where else I can go from here.
Yeah, I think no, honestly, I think we've covered a lot of interesting things. You talked about the fifth. You talked about getting into writing, getting into the video game design aspect of things. Unless you have any quests that you can talk about or any story bits that you can get into about the story or setting, then no, I think we're good.
I could talk a little bit about the main factions, just, give an overview
Yeah,
for people,
absolutely.
who want to know a bit more about them, because we've already covered the fifth, and I feel people are very familiar with them now. But we also have Camelot, which, a lot of people have been really excited for, because Camelot are the ones we're presenting, as the good guys. And, a lot of people do prefer to play the good guy route, because, like me, they probably feel pretty bad killing random NPCs for no reason. So, yeah, Camelot, I think the perception of them that we have is that, they're just completely the Knights of the Round Table, and that's how they do look, mostly visually. But they are more nuanced than that. They were spearheaded by our creative director, Ranger Ridiculous, who was the previous head writer before I came in, but he was writing them, and he's making them a lot more like modern. So they're not like going to be saying like hear ye all the time. They're actually going to have more of a modern interpretation. They just take on the Knights of the Round Table and Arthurian legend as like a sort of theme.
So
and
they're everything the
identity.
Brotherhood in Fallout 4 wants to be.
Essentially, yeah.
It's what the Brotherhood strives to be but can't quite nail. I understand.
They're like actually dressed like knights, and a lot of people have been saying like, so is Fall London going to be the game where you would spec a melee build? And I would say yes. We obviously have new weapons. We have like a list of new firearms coming, some of which we've already released as standalone mods on the Nexus. But this is something where you can actually have fun with playing a melee build, which is something I'm kind of looking forward to, because I find that it's really fun to go melee, but I never want to in most Fallout games, because everyone else is speccing ranged, so you never you feel like you're already at a disadvantage. But in a place like London, where everyone be set at the same disadvantage as you have that ability to finally do that, so you actually get to play with it a bit and have fun. So Camelot would be a great faction for people who want to do that. There's also like the Vagabonds, who are kind of like, the quote-unquote dredges of the street. If you think of like, old-timey like chimney sweeps, like from like Mary Poppins or something, that's kind of like the vibe we're going for, like grimy, like, down on their luck, like just like a street gang like that. And I've actually been writing their dialogue recently. It's been very fun. I would imagine like a Peaky Blinder sort of situation to get an idea of how they look. And then we have their adversaries, the Isle of Dog Syndicate, or the IODS, which their name's a bit of a mouthful. But they're kind of like, the rival gang to the Vagabonds. They have the same sort of Peaky Blinders vibe, but they're a little more wealthy, so they're a bit more refined. And then we have losing my mind. We have Angel, who are, they're the ones I'm going to be the most secretive about, because they're also the ones that are, secretive in nature when you play the game. And, I've heard a couple of people say like, oh, I'm worried that Angel's going to be like the Institute, because they're a high-tech faction. But that's definitely a thing we were looking to avoid. We didn't want, because now every time you make a high-tech faction, people are going to think, oh, the Institute. And the Institute was game-breaking in so many ways that we want to avoid, because it was just like, well, if they can do all of these things, well, then that kind of negates a lot of the struggles of Fallout.
I don't agree with if there was one Institute in the Fallout universe, okay. You know what I mean? Like, if there was just one instance of something like this existing and that was it, like, oh my god, that's amazing. But you make a really good point of, like, if you can do all this, it's like the kid that picks all the superpowers when you want to play superheroes when you're a kid. Like, oh, I have all of them. I can fly, I'm invincible,
like a Mary Sue
I
character.
can teleport. Yeah, exactly. So I understand people's complaint about it, but I feel like, again, handled correctly, that could have been something really good. I like the idea of the Institute, because it's like, oh, here's this big underground, completely just ridiculously amazing, like an anti-Fallout location. Like, there's not, like, you walk in there, it's a completely different world. You know what I mean? And I like the idea of that. But again, giving them too much does take away from it. And so I do agree with you about that. Like, teleportation is the big thing. But again, that makes it makes them so much more crazier. You know what I mean? I don't know. So
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, but I do like the idea of something. So maybe that's how it's going to be in London. Again, you said you were being secretive about it, but if you have something like that isn't so overpowered and a little bit more nuanced, I think that kind of thing works very well in a post-apocalyptic situation. I don't know if you've ever seen A Boy and His Dog. I don't want to get too far on. Okay, it's for free on YouTube. I highly suggest it. It dog meat reference comes from there. Like they took a lot of inspiration from A Boy and His Dog for the Fallout series back in the day. Like I'm talking Fallout 1, 2. But he stumbles across a vault of people, and the way it hits you of like the way this society is working and things like that is like the epitome of a post-apocalyptic like the hair stands up on your skin and you get goosebumps and stuff like that because you're like, what's going on? Like that kind of mentality can be completely enforced by just having an area be completely green. Like they do it in Fallout 3 with the Oasis. You're just walking around and then boom, here's this big oasis and everything, all the plants are alive. I mean, Harold's there, which RIP, and I can't believe they did that. But regardless, I don't want to get into it. But that alone in a post-apocalyptic world can give you shivers. It can actually cause an emotional like reaction. You're like, what the hell is this? So I just feel like with a little nuance, like I said before, an area like that, like the Institute, like those situations, can really be something special, like something like really good. But it like again, I'm rambling.
No, it's fine. Like you actually hit the nail on the head because we're trying to basically, I guess, improve on that and make it something where it's not just this high-tech organization. There's other things going on too that make it the way it is. And yeah, I'd say the only other faction I can really cover, which is actually something people have been asking about a lot, which is interesting, because they weren't, in my mind, the most interesting faction that was written, but the Tommies were brought up a lot in our Discord, and the Tommies are basically just a militia. They're the King's militia, or the Queen's militia, rather. So they're essentially, like, they are kind of like a remnant almost, and, essentially they're the big firepower in London. And, whoever they're really supporting, which right now is the Gentry, I'll sure touch on them as well, is essentially who is really in power. And as for the Gentry, they're, basically stuffy aristocrats. One of our writers, Dis, who focused on them a lot, they're kind of like satirical in a way. Like they're a serious faction, but at the same time they have a lot going on that's kind of just like amusing, like kind of like that classic Fallout satire where you've got these people that are kind of ridiculous. They're kind of almost like, if I could equate them to something, the White Glove Society without the cannibalism and the creepiness, and also just a little more entertaining because the things they prioritize over what normal people struggling to survive in the post-apocalyptic wasteland prioritize are totally different.
Yeah, and those types of groups, I think, work really well for the same reasons,
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And
like,
one thing I picked
offer
up,
a different perspective.
One thing I picked up especially since you might go into the Gentry a little bit, but one thing I picked up on the trailer is he said that no one had heard from Her Majesty in a while. And I was wondering, because we've all seen the concept art of the Pharaoh Queen and stuff like that, so we all
Right.
have seen like what's going on with that. But like I don't even expect you to answer that question when I was going to like just throw at you anyway. So I'm trying to phrase this in a way that works. Like it sounds to me like somebody's still trying to take orders from the Pharaoh Queen. That is my interpretation. If you don't want to answer that right now, that's fine. All I have to say, like a passing comment on that, if that is the case, is I really like the idea of people holding that tradition higher than logic. And if that is the case, I enjoy the tree you're barking up. If people are still trying to honor the queen, even though she's a feral ghoul. Like,
Yes.
Okay.
There is, we do touch on that because that's
is,
the integral aspect of British culture.
That is amazing. And a social commentary that I do not care to try to expose right now, that I'm not going to try to dive into. But I enjoy what you're doing with that, because that just like, I don't know, it's just, of course they would. It is why. Like, it's, of course there is. Of course there's a group that's doing that. Like, and I'm not saying that of course because like, of course it would be written into this. Like, I'm saying if there really was like that situation in real life, like this Fallout situation in London over there, I would expect there to be a group of people that actually did that. Like, of course there is. Like, so I like that that's involved. So I don't know if you're going any more into the Gentry or anything else that you have left there.
Oh, that's I think that's pretty
it?
much all I can comment on without like going
Perfect.
too far deep into like something I shouldn't say.
No, no, I think we have talked about plenty, especially if you feel like you've covered everything that you would like to get out there. So go ahead and promote some of your stuff here, like your links and stuff of that nature. And
sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. It's like at the Amazing Siren. It's each word has the first letter is capitalized. I could actually just
I'll put all the links in the description. Well, yeah, I was gonna say I'll put them all in the description as well, so no worries there.
And you can follow the Fallout London Twitter account as well, which is basically my account exists solely for modding, and so obviously does the Fallout London account. So all the updates will be there. You can also basically follow my Instagram, which is like at SI23N, but just like that's basically the only social media I'm active on. So yeah, that's basically everything, I think.
Perfect. Well, thank you for doing this and giving us a bit more insight about you and the writing process and what goes into that, and some more little bits on the London project. I really appreciate it.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch the sky. You gon' touch the sky, baby girl. Testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die.